So I'm working on the inner fender wells now, and I like the way it came out. I thought I'd have some tiger stripes, but no such tiger stripes. At least not in this light. You can see pinholes, and I left those because this is the inner fender well. There's a nice one there. But other than that, for the inner fender wells, it doesn't really need to be perfect. So there is the first inner fender well, and I'm going to try and show all of the grinding and welding that I did. I did body work right here. There was a rusted out hole here. So there you go. All right, so this is our major problem here. And I used this grinder to grind all the metal that had huge amounts of rust buildup all over this. And you can see it's going to leave some marks, but that's okay. I've had no problem getting all of that off. So there's the hole, and what I've got here is a piece of metal that I bent with a lip along here, and I'm getting just get it close is all I'm going to do here, so that I can mark where I'm going to need to cut. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little inside of this, and then from the back side I'm going to scribe and cut this metal as close to perfect as I can get it. And then what that's going to do is it's going to keep me from having to fill a bunch of gaps in the welds. So that's the start. What I have here, I've got good metal here and good metal all the way up here. I've really got good metal to the end of this crack. So if I go up about here and come across, like I said, I'm going to cut it short of that line down here to the good place where I've got fairly decent structural. This is only a fender well. You know, I probably should have just replaced the fender well, but you know, this is fun and it's not a big deal. So let's get the grinder out and cut it. So now you can see I've got it cut here. There's a support here, and I'm going to keep that, much of it as I can. And I'm going to just take that off. I'll clean all this up with a grinder. And we're going to lay the new metal over it and keep this support. So we're going to have plenty of structure here. So now that it's all shined up, you know, it's not perfect, but it's going to work for what I want to do. Got my metal. Do is turn this over, the fender over, put this metal on, and I'm going to scribe, just mark with the black marker where I need to cut this to get it as close as I can to that opening. And then I'm probably going to have to bend it to match the bends, but it should be just fine. So what I decided to do is I went underneath over here where it didn't have any structure. And then I went on top over here to catch a little bit better metal. This is all just fiddling, and I'm sure you don't want to watch a bunch of fiddling. So what I'm going to do is just work this up. Just run a bead across, stitch weld basically. And then if I've got a gap here, I'll put something behind it and I'll fill it. It's no big deal. It's the bottom of an inner fender well, fellas. So I'll just get this done and we'll move on from there. And that will be taking all the rest of this rust off. And there's the repair. So now all I've got to do is grind it down. And after it's ground down, I put on the Bondo hair just so I don't get any cracks down the road. Not to say I won't, but then I'm going to smooth all this out, then I'll hit it with just regular Bondo. So, with that repair on its way, looks good. This took a long time and a lot of grinding. And I've got a first coat of body filler on here. And so when this is dry, I'll sand it. Probably have to put another one or two on there. It's not a big deal. It's an inner fender well. I started out with a really aggressive grinder. Then I went to these sandpaper discs, and that got a lot of it, but it started to just shine the rust in the paint after a while. So then I went with these, they're like 26 grit. They're the little screw-in type, and that really cut it. And I went through quite a few of them with the die grinder, and that's an electric, or I mean a air die grinder. And then I went over it with some of these pads. It didn't do that great a job, but I've got to deal with the scratches that this left. So I actually ran over it a little bit with this, and we'll just use the high bill primer to get those scratches out. So the second coat, and I've got that sanded down. There's a couple of pinholes that I'm going to have to fill, but it's straight and flat. And then what I did is I used this rust reformer. Because this has so many pits, I decided that I would spray, kind of went over most of it, almost all of it, which will seal in the rust. And then I'm going to sand this off. And then the rust reformer will stay in the holes. And so anywhere where I thought there might be rust or pit, I went ahead and did. Like in this corner, couldn't quite get all of it out. All along this lip, there's no way to get it out. So I've got it all, I guess, what would you call it? It's all neutralized and ready. So I'm going to give it the 24 hours, and then I'm going to sand it off. And then we will decide what we're going to do with that. And I think I'm going to fill those. I think I'm going to fill all the way up. It starts to mellow out here. And I can live with a couple of pits, especially down low here, but it sure will be nice to go ahead and fill those, sand them down, and then we can start our primer. After waiting overnight, I started with 180, and it wasn't really cutting it, all this rust reformer. So I took the Bondo Buster with 80 grit, and it took it down to this. Now I'm going to have to get in these little crevices, but now I'm starting to fill the pinholes and the rust holes, because the way that works, as you can see right in here, that rust reformer stays in the pits. And so that's still doing its job. I put on a real light skin of Bondo, and I'm just going to try the Bondo Buster on it and see if I can just buzz this down, because there's no real getting it flat with blocking. It's all angles. So, and I got a little touch up there. So let me show you how well this Bondo Buster works. I'm just going to use it to cut it down most of the way. And just get the ridges off, the hard part, you know, the hard sanding part. This is an old, dull piece of sandpaper, so I'm going to switch it. Just get it close, and then I'm going to get in there with the hand sander and then get it down to just the pits. You can see a pit coming. But this makes quick work of it. Start to see the pits show up here, and that's what we're trying to fill. So this is good just to get the hard part of the sanding done. I virtually took it off, but there's really no pits under there. That was a visual. Still didn't change this paper, but you can get the idea. See that just really makes life easy. So with the Bondo Buster and 80 grit, all I did was get the edges feathered and a little bit taken down. You know, in some places I may have gone a little too far, but that's okay, because it's, like I said, it's just a, see this I went down too far, but it's still filling the holes. So I'm not sure how far I'm going to go, but we'll just do the rest with the hand sanding. After hand sanding it down, I did the 80 grit with the Bondo Buster, and then I did 180. And we're just going to see how that goes. So right now what I'm going to do is wipe it down with wax and grease remover, and then I'm going to go ahead and spray the self-etching primer. So I'll pick it up where the primer's on it. So I was told that the mistake that everyone or a lot of people make with self-etching primer is that they put it on too heavy. It just needs to be on, from what I understand. I've only got 10 years painting motorcycle paints, but I've got no time in cars. So from what I was shown from my paint consultant is to just go light.
This is just to get the metal prepped so that the primer will stick. This will stick to the metal, and the primer will stick to this. I won't show you the whole thing, but I'll get it to you after we're done with this and it's dried.
There it is, dried. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of 180, and then we're going to get the high build on it. And I'll come back when we've got the high build on it. All right, I got the primer mixed up.
I'm going to put my respirator on, and I'm going to just spray it. I know I haven't been showing how, the actual work being done. It's just been a lot of showing what I'm done. So I thought I'd do a little bit of this, but I won't bore you with the whole thing. So I just use a cheap Harbor Freight gun for my primer. I've got a DeVelbus for my color, and this works fine. Going to hit the edges. Get them out of the way. Pretty thick. I want to have a lot of product on here. I can already see that the deep scratches are going to be issue. I can see those really, really deep scratches down in here. So we'll see what that presents as a problem or not.
It's been overnight, so I've got a bucket of water here. We're going to do some wet sanding. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to take 220. I could even take 180, but it's probably not going to need it. And we're going to wet sand this a little. And the goal, I sprayed on a guide coat. But you can see real easy. You can see here the imperfections start to surface. You've got a little low spot here. These are all grinding marks. Now these will all come out as long as I put enough on here. They'll come out without me breaking through to either body filler or metal. So when I start to see that self-etching primer come through, I'm going to stop. And then I'm just going to assess it and see if I need to do another coat of primer. The other inner fender well, I didn't have to do another coat of primer. I was able to hand sand it. You know, this is a lot of complex curves, so it's not like something that wouldn't have a wave in it. And from the factory, there's huge, like down here, I'll show you. You can see where they press this out, they just press it into this shape. Well, it buckles in places, and that's all factory. So I'm going to just go in here with my finger. I'm going to make this all smooth, and boom, you're done. So I'm going to go ahead and work on all this, and we'll see how it looks. I went around everything, and you can already see where these are manufacturing marks here. So I already saw that I was getting into the primer, and there's probably quite a bit of primer still left in that. I'm just trying to get the guide coat off to identify what would look like a factory roll or divot. These are factory here, so I don't have to worry about those. And this ring, this thing must be a factory deal. These little low spots here, and I even think that one is a factory area. Now in here, this is way down below, so I'm going to do my best. I'm going to, you can see there's scratch marks here. If I smooth those out, they'll still look like your factory bends and places where the metal actually just collapsed under the pressure of that pressing. So I'll just clean all this up by hand, but by doing a block at first, and I want to show you the block a little later. It's a soft block, but this here is factory. Now I filled in here and I filled in here, so some of that factory lines here are going to go away, so you'll just see it faintly under the paint, which is perfect. And it really doesn't matter in here. I'm gonna get in here. The object is to get it all looking like that, or maybe here, where all the guide coat is off. You don't see anything but just gray, and you haven't burnt through too much. I'm using a sealer, so I can go over a little, a couple burn throughs and things like that. Down here it's looking good. I should be able to sand a lot of this out, and you still see the holes here. So that's the idea. Now here's grinder marks. We're going to see if we can sand these out the first time. But the object for me this time is to get as much of this to the to the flat gray without any of this black, which means it's totally flat, ready to paint. I'm going to move up in sandpaper from the 220 I've been using. I'll go to 320 and get a little bit more of it. But if I start hitting these high spots like here, so I'm going to stay away from this whole area here and then catch this with my hand sanding so that I don't burn through every one of these here and here and here. And other places that are like that. There's a line somewhere up in here, right here. These are a little high, and that means these are low, but they're also low here. So these are probably, could be these were dented, but I really don't think so. I think this is a dent, but there's very few. These are all the press marks running down here and down here. So I'm just going to get in there by hand. Plus, the fender bolts on here, so you don't see any of this. You just see from here on down. So there you go. I'm going to continue to sand. I'm going to move up to 320. What I've been focusing on is the money area, which is all up in here, all around there. So I've started over in here. It's highly visible right in here. And so I've gotten everything out with the exception of these little pinholes, which I know I'm going to have quite a few. But I thought I'd show you how, even though I'm at 320, I don't, like here, I didn't get every little bit out because I'm have to come back here with 400 or 600 prior to painting it. So if I'm able to do this in one coat, or well, I put almost 3 coats, but one application of high build primer, even if it isn't perfect, it's a fender well, then I won't have to respray it. And I probably will just live with the pinholes. And there's ways of taking care of that. And there's still enough primer left here to be able to fill these and probably block them down. But there's also another trick I can do. But anyway, I want to show you how these come out. You can see there's a lot here, and I'm not sure if any of these are going to give me trouble. But it's so far down here that I'm really not that concerned. So let's see if I can get this onto those spots. And I don't know if you can see them. I'm sure you can. So I've already blocked this whole area with this flexible two-sided block with the 320, and I don't want to go too deep because I still got to come out with 400 or 600. But there's still enough left that I just keep going and they'll come out. And as you can see, to get this area here, I had to get pretty close to that self-etching primer, but I got it. I got all the way around it. And there's really no high spots or low spots, and on a flat panel, might be a little bit more important to maybe kind of take this as a high spot, but if I had a regular block, a flat block and a flat surface, and that's popping up, then I'd probably have to do something with it. But let's just keep going. I'm done with the 320, and what I did was I got most everything out, but I left, you can even see it, like up in here, just to remind me, or just to give me more guide when I start with the 600. And I'm gonna probably do 600 here, but that's when I'll work on all of the rest. And I won't do it with a block. I'm gonna do it with my hand so I can get down in here and recreate these lines a little bit. You'll see a little bit of that in the paint, which is, these are factory wrinkles from the pressing. get down in these holes, take off this edge. And this was interesting. It's a hole, and I know that's part of the pressing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in there and I'm just going to, with my hand and the 600, and get that all flat. So you'll hopefully still see the ring. That would be nice. I doubt you will. I'm going to get in here and get most of this. There were some really deep pits like this up in this area, up in this area, and I got those out with the block. But there's a few places that I got really close and started going through. And I don't know if you remember, but there was all kinds of grinding marks in here, and I'll be able to get all those out. So I'm hopeful that with the 600, I'm going to get this really, really flat for a fender well. And it kind of needs to be, because it's going to be the color of the body. And all in here, I'll get with the 600. The block can't get up in there very well. I'm going to get these edges. So I'm going to go and find you can see right here. You can see that I'm really close. So I left enough primer to be able to sand with the 600, get the scratches out, get those I left those final little pits so that I know that I've got that area with the 600. So I'll go ahead and start wet sanding with the 600. Well, I managed to get it. I got all of it sanded to 600, and I really didn't even get into any metal. That's really, really good. And the money area is right in here. All right in here. Because that's what you're going to see inside the motor compartment. So now let's get this thing painted. It's been wiped down with grass. It's been wiped out with grease and oil remover. We've got high-tech primer sealer gray,
2 medium wet coats. Get the edge first. And then I like to get this. And let it sit for 20 minutes. And we'll give it the second coat. Now, two medium wet coats of base. Now 2 medium wet coats of clear. I had a problem with the base coat where the gun was kind of intermittently wasn't spraying even. It came out okay, but I figured it out. It's a little vent on the top of the cap. It was plugged, so it just was sucking more or less, and then it, you know, wouldn't get enough product. And so I fixed that, obviously, and now it just paints beautiful.
And there it is after the 2 coats of clear. It's shiny. It looks blue in the camera, but it's really a teal. And the teal is real nice. So there we go. One more piece down. The hood's painted, and because I'm doing this in a garage, I'm going to have to do a little color sanding, but not much. It's really shiny and just, you know, silky smooth. So I move on to the right front fender. So this is a before. I'm not going to go through any of the process, but this is before. Been making a lot of progress. Here's the left quarter panel and the door jamb. So I'm gonna end the video on this because it's really long, and I know it just really gets to be a bit much to watch. I hate it when they get like this, but it's just the way it is. And I laid this on just about as thick as I felt I could, and as you can see, I don't know if you can see right there, but there's a little knit in there, and there was a little kind of puddling, so I got it on there just as thick as possible, but boy, I'm happy. This is looking good. It's not even rubbed out. I mean, I've got like 3.5 coats on it. So I'm going to end it with this. Got a couple little nits, couple little things here and there, but overall, to do this in a garage, this has turned out really well. And I got the other side done, and it looks good also. So what's left is the tailgate, these 2 doors and door jambs, this top, this door, So there's quite a bit left to do, but boy, the big parts are done. And you can look at the inside here. Came out really nice. So there'll be plenty of paint to rub out anything that might be in there. But it's shiny and it's teal. And like I said, this side here is done. So with that, I'm going to end this as part 1, and I'll see you guys on part 2.